A 5-year-old girl walked into her millionaire father's office holding the hand of a dirty, bruised teenager from the street. Before security could react, the little girl looked up at her shocked father and said 5 words that would change everything. The receptionist froze. Security guards reached for their radios. But little Emma Richardson didn't notice any of it. She marched straight through the glass doors of Richardson Industries with absolute certainty, her pink backpack bouncing against her shoulders, pulling along a girl who looked like she'd been sleeping under bridges for weeks. "I need to see my daddy right now," Emma announced to the security guard blocking her path. "It's really, really important." The guard recognized the boss's daughter immediately and stepped aside, speaking urgently into his radio. Within seconds, James Richardson, one of the wealthiest real estate developers in Chicago, came rushing out of the executive conference room. He'd been in the middle of closing a $40 million deal. His face went from confusion to alarm as he took in the scene before him. His pristine, perfectly dressed daughter standing next to a teenager who looked like she'd been through absolute hell. The girl was maybe 16 or 17, with matted brown hair, hollow cheeks, and clothes so filthy they were practically falling apart. She had a black eye that was still fresh, purple and swollen, and her hands were shaking. "Emma, sweetheart, what are you doing here? Where's your nanny?" James asked, kneeling down to his daughter's level. His voice was controlled, but his eyes kept darting to the teenager, trying to understand what possible connection there could be. Emma looked up at him with those impossibly blue eyes she'd inherited from her mother, the mother who'd died giving birth to her 5 years ago. "Daddy, this is really important," she said with the seriousness only a 5-year-old can manage. "I found her on the street near my school. She was crying and she had nowhere to go." James felt his throat tighten. His daughter had always had a tender heart, too tender sometimes. She cried when she saw homeless people, insisted on giving her allowance to anyone who asked, and once tried to bring home a wounded pigeon she found in the park. But this was different. This was dangerous. You couldn't just bring strangers off the street, especially not into his office. Especially not teenagers who looked like they'd been living rough for God knows how long. "Emma, honey, that's very kind of you, but we can't just," he started to say, but his daughter interrupted him. "Daddy, she's my big sister," Emma declared, her voice ringing out clear and certain across the marble lobby. The words hit James like a physical blow. He actually rocked back on his heels. Around them, the lobby went completely silent. Executives froze mid-stride. The receptionist's fingers stopped typing. Security guards exchanged worried glances. James felt like the floor had dropped out from under him. "Sweetheart, what are you talking about?" he managed to say, his voice barely above a whisper. "Mommy only had you. You don't have a sister." Emma squeezed the teenager's hand tighter and looked up at her with pure adoration. "But she does, Daddy. She has the same eyes as Mommy. Look at her." And she knew Mommy's name without me telling her. She knew everything. The teenager, who hadn't said a word this entire time, finally looked directly at James, and when their eyes met, he felt something crack inside his chest. Because Emma was right. Those eyes. He knew those eyes. They were the exact shade of blue-green that Sarah had, the same unusual color that had made him fall in love with his wife the moment he first saw her, the same eyes that stared back at him from Emma's face every single day. But this was impossible. Absolutely impossible. Wasn't it? James Richardson stood up slowly, his mind racing through every possible explanation. He was a logical man, a businessman who dealt in facts and figures, contracts and concrete evidence. But right now, logic was failing him completely. He looked at the girl standing before him, really looked at her this time, and felt his heart hammering against his ribs. Beyond the dirt, beyond the bruises, beyond the obvious signs of hardship, there was something hauntingly familiar about her face. The shape of her jaw, the way she held herself despite everything, and those eyes, those impossible eyes. "What's your name?" James asked the teenager, his voice coming out rougher than he intended. The girl hesitated, glancing down at Emma, who gave her hand an encouraging squeeze. "Olivia," she said quietly, her voice hoarse like she hadn't used it much lately. "Olivia Morgan." James felt the name hit him like a punch to the gut. Morgan. That had been Sarah's maiden name, his late wife's family name. He forced himself to take a breath, to think clearly. This could be a coincidence. It could be a scam. There were people who targeted wealthy families, who researched them and created elaborate stories to extract money. He'd dealt with fraudsters before, People who claimed to be long-lost relatives or business partners owed fortunes. But Emma's small hand tugged at his suit jacket, pulling his attention back down to her upturned face. "Daddy, I was walking with Miss Chen after school, and I saw her sitting on the bench near the coffee shop," Emma explained, her words tumbling out in that rapid-fire way children talk when they're excited. She was crying really hard, and nobody was helping her. Everyone was just walking past like she was invisible. So I told Miss Chen we had to stop, and I went over and asked if she was okay. James made a mental note to have a serious conversation with Emma's nanny about stranger danger, but right now he needed to hear the rest. "And then what happened, sweetheart?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Emma's face lit up with the memory. "She looked at me, Daddy, and she stopped crying. She just stared at me for a really long time, and then she said, 'You have Sarah's eyes.' She said Mommy's name, Daddy, without me telling her anything, and I asked her how she knew Mommy, and she told me she was Mommy's daughter from before you and Mommy got married." The lobby seemed to tilt. James reached out and grabbed the edge of the reception desk to steady himself. Before they got married, Sarah had been 23 when they met, 24 when they married. She'd never mentioned having a child, never even hinted at it. They'd shared everything with each other, or so he'd thought. Every secret, every dream, every fear. She'd told him about her difficult childhood, about her controlling parents who disowned her when she chose to pursue art instead of law, about the years she'd struggled alone in Chicago before they met. But a child? A daughter? That was impossible. "Sir, should I call the police?" The head of security approached quietly, his hand resting on his radio. James looked at Olivia again. She was trembling now, and he could see fresh tears gathering in those eerily familiar eyes. She looked terrified, like a cornered animal ready to bolt at any second. If she was running some kind of scam, she was either an incredibly talented actress, or she genuinely believed what she was saying. Either way, calling the police right now felt wrong. Emma would be traumatized, and if there was even the slightest chance, the smallest possibility that this girl was telling the truth, then he needed to know. "No police," James said firmly, making a decision that would change everything. "Clear the lobby. Everyone out. Cancel my meetings for the rest of the day." His assistant started a protest mentioning the $40 million deal, but James cut her off with a look. "I said cancel everything. Now." He turned back to Olivia and Emma, his mind still reeling but his voice calm. "We're going to go up to my private office and we're going to talk. Really talk. And Olivia, I need you to tell me everything. From the beginning." James led them to his private elevator, the one reserved exclusively for executives. Emma chattered the whole way up, completely oblivious to the tension crackling in the air. She held Olivia's hand like they'd known each other forever, occasionally looking up at the teenager with pure adoration. Olivia, for her part, said nothing. She kept her eyes down, her shoulders hunched, looking like she expected to be thrown out at any moment. The elevator dinged and opened directly into James's corner office on the 42nd floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of downtown Chicago, the lake glittering in the distance. It was the kind of office that usually impressed people, made them understand exactly how successful James Richardson had become. But Olivia didn't even glance at the view. She stood frozen just inside the doorway, looking small and lost in the massive space. James gestured to the leather couch by the windows. "Please, sit down," he said, trying to make his voice gentle. "Emma, sweetheart, can you go play with your toys in the corner for a few minutes? The grown-ups need to talk." Emma pouted but obediently went to the toy chest James kept in his office for her visits. She pulled out her coloring books and crayons, though James noticed she kept glancing over at them, clearly trying to listen. James sat in the armchair across from Olivia and studied her more carefully. Now that they were in better light, he could see more details. She had a long scar on her forearm, mostly healed but still pink. Her fingernails were broken and dirty. There were other bruises besides the black eye, yellowing ones on her arms that suggested they were a few days old. She'd been in a fight, or multiple fights. She'd been living rough for a while, that much was obvious. But there was something else too. Something in the way she carried herself that reminded him painfully of Sarah. His wife had that same quiet dignity, even in her worst moments. "How old are you, Olivia?" James asked, starting with the basics. 17, she answered, her voice barely above a whisper. I'll be 18 in 2 months. James did the quick math in his head. If she was 17 now, she would have been born roughly 18 years ago. Sarah would have been around 21 or 22, years before they met. The timeline was possible, at least. "Where have you been living?" he asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Olivia's hands twisted in her lap, pulling at the frayed edges of her torn jacket. "Shelters, mostly, sometimes on the street. I aged out of foster care 6 months ago." Her voice cracked slightly. "Nobody really cares what happens to you after that. You're just out, on your own." James felt something twist in his chest. He dealt with numbers and buildings, not human suffering. But there was something about this girl that made him want to help, even if everything she was saying turned out to be a lie. "And before foster care? What happened to your family?" Olivia looked up then, and James saw such raw pain in her eyes that he had to look away. "I never really had one," she said quietly. "My mother, Sarah Morgan, she gave me up when I was born. I know she was young, maybe too young. The foster system told me she was just a kid herself, not ready to be a mom. I spent my whole life in the system, moving from home to home. Some were okay, most weren't." She paused, taking a shaky breath. "I always wondered about her, you know? My real mom, what she looked like, if she ever thought about me, if she regretted giving me away." James's throat felt tight. Sarah had never mentioned any of this, not once in their 8 years of marriage. He thought about the woman he'd loved, the woman who'd been so excited to be pregnant with Emma, who'd decorated the nursery with such joy. Had she been thinking about another daughter the whole time? A daughter she'd given up years before? "How did you find out Sarah was your mother?" he asked, needing to understand. "What made you come looking?" Olivia reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out a battered envelope, its edges worn soft from handling. She held it out to James with trembling fingers. "I found this in my social services file when I turned 16. They're required to give you whatever information they have about your birth parents once you're old enough. This was all there was. A single letter she wrote when she gave me up." James took the envelope carefully, feeling the weight of it in his hand. Inside was a single sheet of paper, the ink faded but still legible. He recognized Sarah's handwriting immediately, that distinctive looping script she'd used for everything. His heart started pounding as he began to read words his wife had written almost 18 years ago. The letter was dated March 15th, 18 years ago. James's hands shook as he read Sarah's words, written in that moment when she'd given up her baby. "To whoever reads this, please know that I love my daughter more than anything in this world. I'm 17 years old and I have no family, no support, no way to give her the life she deserves. My parents disowned me when they found out I was pregnant. They called me a disgrace and told me never to come back. I've been living in a shelter trying to finish high school, and I know I can't raise a baby like this. She deserves so much more than I can give her right now." James had to pause, blinking back tears. Sarah had never told him any of this. He'd known her parents were difficult, that they'd cut her off, but he'd thought it was because she chose art school. She'd never mentioned being pregnant at 17, never mentioned the real reason they'd disowned her. The letter continued. "I'm naming her Olivia Grace Morgan. I hope whoever adopts her keeps that name, though I know they might not. I hope she grows up knowing she was wanted, that I didn't give her away because I didn't love her. I gave her away because I loved her too much to let her suffer in poverty with me. Maybe someday when I'm older and have my life together, I'll try to find her. Tell her I'm sorry. Tell her I thought about her every single day." The letter was signed with Sarah's full name and dated. Below it was an official stamp from the Illinois Department of Children and Family Services, certifying it as an authentic document from their records. James felt like he was reading about a stranger. This wasn't the Sarah he'd known, the confident artist who'd swept into his life with her paintings and her laugh. This was a scared teenager, alone and desperate. He looked up at Olivia, who was watching him with those heartbreaking eyes. "She never told me," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "In 8 years of marriage, she never once mentioned you." Olivia nodded slowly, like she'd expected this. "I figured. When I started looking for her 2 years ago, I found out she'd gotten married, had a life, had another daughter." She glanced over at Emma, who was still coloring but definitely listening. "I didn't want to mess that up for her. I just wanted to see her, you know? Just once. See what she looked like, if I looked like her. But I could never work up the courage to actually approach her. I'd sit outside art galleries when she had shows, just watching from across the street." James felt his chest tighten. "When did you find out she'd died?" he asked softly. Olivia's face crumpled. 6 months ago. I'd finally decided I was going to introduce myself. I was going to walk up to her at her next gallery opening and just tell her who I was, but when I looked up the date of her next show, I found her obituary instead. Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. I never got to meet her, never got to hear her voice, never got to know if she ever really thought about me like she said in that letter. James had to look away, staring out at the Chicago skyline through the blur of his own tears. Sarah had died 5 years ago, complications during childbirth. She'd been so happy when she found out she was pregnant with Emma, despite the risks. The doctors had warned her, told her the pregnancy could be dangerous given some underlying health issues. But Sarah had been determined. She'd wanted that baby more than anything. Had she been thinking about Olivia then? Trying to make up for the daughter she'd given away by being the perfect mother to Emma? Before you share what happened next, leave a like if this story is touching your heart, James said, then caught himself. No, wait. He was thinking about Emma's constant YouTube watching. This wasn't a video. This was his life falling apart. He shook his head, trying to clear it. Olivia, I need you to understand something. If what you're saying is true, if you really are Sarah's daughter, then you're Emma's half-sister. But I need proof beyond this letter. I need to know for certain. Olivia nodded quickly. I understand. I'm not asking for money or anything. I just wanted Emma to know she has a sister. When I saw her today on that street looking so much like our mom, I couldn't help it. I started crying. And then she came over and she was so kind, so sweet. And she reminded me so much of how I imagined Sarah would be. She wiped her eyes roughly. I can do a DNA test. Whatever you need. I'm not trying to scam you or take anything from you. I just wanted to not be alone anymore. Tell me in the comments, what would you do in James's position right now? Would you trust her immediately or would you be suspicious? James made a decision that went against every cautious business instinct he'd ever developed. Okay, he said firmly. We'll do a DNA test. But that takes time. And you look like you haven't eaten in days. You're also clearly hurt. He stood up and walked to his desk, pressing the intercom button. Margaret, I need you to come in here, please. His executive assistant appeared within seconds, her professional composure faltering slightly when she saw Olivia's condition up close. Yes, sir? Margaret asked, her eyes full of questions she was too professional to voice. James knew Margaret had worked for him since before Sarah died. She'd helped him through the worst grief of his life, essentially running the company while he fell apart. If anyone deserved to know what was happening, it was her. Margaret, this is Olivia. She may be Emma's half-sister, Sarah's daughter from before we met. James said the words out loud for the first time, and they felt surreal in his mouth. Margaret's eyes widened, but she recovered quickly. I need you to arrange several things immediately. First, call Dr. Peterson and tell him I need a DNA test done today, completely confidential. Then contact the Hilton and book a suite, and get someone from housekeeping to bring up some clean clothes in Olivia's size. Olivia stood up abruptly, shaking her head. No, I can't. You don't have to do all that. I'll just go back to the shelter. We can do the DNA test and I'll wait for the results there. Her voice was panicked, like she was waiting for the other shoe to drop, for this kindness to be snatched away. James recognized that fear. He'd seen it in business negotiations, in people who'd been burned too many times to trust good fortune. You're not going back to any shelter, James said, his voice leaving no room for argument. If you're Emma's sister, then you're family. And even if you're not, you're a 17-year-old kid living on the street who knew my wife. Either way, I'm not sending you back out there. He softened his tone. Let me help you, Olivia. It's what Sarah would have wanted. At the mention of Sarah's name, Olivia's composure finally broke completely. She sat back down and started sobbing, deep, wrenching sobs that shook her whole body. Emma immediately abandoned her coloring and ran over, climbing onto the couch and wrapping her small arms around Olivia's waist. It's okay, Emma said in that matter-of-fact way children have. My daddy is really nice. He helps people all the time. He built homes for people who didn't have any. He'll help you too. James felt his heart crack watching his 5-year-old daughter comfort this broken teenager. Emma had Sarah's compassion, that inability to see someone hurting without trying to fix it. Margaret quietly excused herself to make the arrangements, and James sat down on the other side of Olivia. He didn't touch her, sensing she needed space, but he stayed close. When's the last time you ate? He asked gently. Olivia tried to compose herself, wiping her face with her dirty sleeves. Yesterday morning. The shelter served breakfast. Her voice was hoarse from crying. I got kicked out yesterday afternoon for breaking curfew the night before. Once you're out, they don't let you back in for 72 hours. That's the rule. She laughed bitterly. I broke curfew because I was at the library trying to finish my GED. Funny, right? Trying to better myself got me thrown out on the street. James felt anger rising in his chest, not at Olivia, but at a system that would punish a kid for trying to get an education. You're working on your GED? He asked, latching on to that detail. Olivia nodded. I'm so close to finishing. Just 2 more tests. But I missed the last exam because I didn't have the $45 fee. She looked down at her hands. I know that probably sounds stupid to you. $45 is nothing to someone like you. But when you're living day to day, it might as well be $1 million. It doesn't sound stupid at all, James said quietly. It sounds like you're fighting hard to build a future for yourself despite impossible odds. That takes courage. He pulled out his phone and texted Margaret to add GED exam fees and scheduling to her list. Then he looked at Olivia seriously. I'm going to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Those bruises on your face and arms. Did someone hurt you? Olivia tensed, her hand instinctively going to her black eye. For a long moment, James thought she wouldn't answer. Then she spoke, her voice flat and emotionless in that way people sound when they're talking about trauma. There was a guy at the last shelter. He kept bothering me, saying things, touching me when I walked past. I told the staff, but they said I was making trouble. 2 nights ago, he cornered me in the stairwell. She paused, swallowing hard. I fought back, broke his nose. That's why I got kicked out. Zero tolerance policy for violence, even in self-defense. James had to clench his fists to keep his hands from shaking with rage. This child, this teenager who might be his daughter's sister, had been assaulted and then punished for defending herself. Do you know his name? The shelter's name? He asked, his voice deadly calm. Olivia looked at him warily. Why? James met her eyes steadily. Because I'm going to make sure that shelter gets investigated, and that man faces consequences. Nobody touches you and gets away with it. Nobody. Margaret returned with Dr. Peterson in tow, who'd apparently been having lunch in the building and came straight up. He was a distinguished man in his 60s, the Richardson family physician for years. He'd delivered Emma, held Sarah's hand in those final moments, helped James through the aftermath. When he saw Olivia, his medical training kicked in immediately. That eye needs ice, he said without preamble. And those bruises need to be documented and photographed. If you want to press charges, you'll need evidence. Within 30 minutes, the office had transformed into a makeshift medical examination room. Dr. Peterson worked efficiently, treating Olivia's injuries while asking gentle questions about her health history. Margaret had returned with bags of clothing from the high-end boutiques in the building's ground floor. Emma supervised everything with the seriousness of a tiny general, making sure Olivia had water and the good cookies from her daddy's desk drawer. James stood by the windows, watching the city below while listening to everything happening behind him. Dr. Peterson confirmed what James had suspected. Olivia was malnourished, dehydrated, and showed signs of chronic stress. But she was also remarkably resilient. Her vital signs were strong. She'd survived things that would have broken most people. The DNA test was simple, just a cheek swab from both Olivia and Emma. Dr. Peterson promised to rush the results through his private lab, calling in favors to get answers within 48 hours instead of the usual week. Now, Dr. Peterson said, packing up his medical bag, this young lady needs food, a shower, and about 12 hours of sleep. In that order. He fixed James with a stern look. I don't know what's going on here exactly, but that girl has been through hell. Whatever you decide to do after you get those test results, she needs stability right now. Understood? James nodded. Understood. After Dr. Peterson left, Margaret announced that the hotel suite was ready, and she'd arranged for room service to be waiting. She'd also contacted a trauma counselor who specialized in foster youth, in case Olivia wanted someone to talk to. James watched his assistant work with gratitude. Margaret had basically read his mind, anticipating needs he hadn't even thought of yet. Thank you, he said quietly. For everything. Margaret squeezed his shoulder briefly. That girl has Sarah's eyes. Anyone can see it. Whatever the test says, she needs help, and you're the one who can give it to her. She lowered her voice. But James, be careful. If she is Sarah's daughter, if this is real, it's going to change everything. Emma's inheritance, your family structure, the company succession plans. You need to think about the legal implications. James knew she was right. If Olivia was Sarah's biological daughter, she had legal rights. Rights to Sarah's estate, to the trust fund they'd set up, possibly even to a share of the company since Sarah had been a partner. There were people who would tell him to be cautious, to protect his assets, to make sure this wasn't an elaborate con. But when he looked at Olivia, sitting on his couch wearing clothes that actually fit for the first time in months, carefully eating the sandwich Margaret had brought up like she was afraid it might disappear, all he could think was that she was just a kid who'd been failed by every system meant to protect her. I'll deal with the legal stuff later, James said firmly. Right now I'm going to make sure she's safe. He walked over to where Olivia was sitting with Emma. Okay, here's what's going to happen. Emma and I are going to take you to the hotel. You're going to eat a real meal, take a shower, and get some rest. Tomorrow we'll figure out next steps. The DNA results should be back in 2 days. Until then, you're not going back on the street. Agreed? Olivia looked up at him with those heartbreaking eyes, and James saw hope there for the first time. Real hope, mixed with fear and disbelief, like she was waiting for him to laugh and say it was all a joke. Why are you being so nice to me? She asked, her voice cracking. You don't even know if I'm telling the truth. I could be lying about everything. Why would you help me? James pulled up a chair and sat down so he was at eye level with Olivia. You want to know why I'm helping you? He asked. Because 5 years ago my wife died bringing our daughter into this world. She was the most generous, compassionate person I've ever known. She saw the best in everyone, gave to anyone who needed it, believed that kindness could change the world. His voice grew thick with emotion. If Sarah had known you were out here, struggling and alone, it would have destroyed her. She would have moved heaven and earth to find you, to help you. He paused, looking over at Emma, who was watching him with those same blue-green eyes. I can't bring Sarah back. I can't undo the choices she made when she was 17 and terrified. But I can do what she would have done if she were here. I can help you. Whether you're her biological daughter or not, you knew her name. You have that letter. And you're a kid who needs help. That's enough for me. Olivia's tears started flowing again, but this time they seemed different. Not tears of pain or fear, but something else. Relief, maybe. Or gratitude. She would have wanted me? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Even after she gave me up? You really think she would have wanted to know me? The question broke James's heart, because he realized Olivia had spent her entire life wondering if she'd been wanted, if she'd been loved, if giving her up had been easy for Sarah. Listen to me carefully, James said, his voice intense. I read that letter. I saw what she wrote. Giving you up was the hardest thing she ever did. She didn't do it because she didn't want you. She did it because she wanted you to have a better life than she could give you at 17, with no family and no support. He reached out slowly, giving Olivia time to pull away if she wanted, and took her hand. You were wanted, Olivia. You were loved. You still are. Emma, who'd been unusually quiet, suddenly spoke up. Daddy's right. Mommy's picture is all over our house and she's always smiling. She was happy, and I think she'd be happy to know I have a big sister. She climbed onto Olivia's lap with the easy trust of a 5-year-old who'd never learned to be afraid of the world. I always wanted a sister. I asked Santa for one last Christmas, but Daddy said Santa couldn't bring sisters. But maybe he did anyway, just really late. The innocence of Emma's words made both James and Olivia laugh through their tears. James stood up and held out his hand to Olivia. Come on, let's get you out of here and somewhere comfortable. We've got 2 days until the test results come back. 2 days to get you fed, rested, and healthy. Then we'll figure out everything else together. Olivia took his hand and stood up, still looking uncertain but less terrified than before. Margaret had packed all the new clothes into bags, and one of the security guards brought them to the private elevator. As they rode down, James watched Olivia in the elevator's mirrored walls. Now that she was cleaned up a bit and wearing clothes that fit, the resemblance to Sarah was even more striking. It wasn't just the eyes. It was the slope of her nose, the shape of her face, the way she moved. How had Sarah kept this secret? How had she carried the weight of giving up a child and never told him? They rode in James's car to the Hilton, with Emma chattering the whole way about all the things she wanted to show Olivia. Her room, her toys, her favorite park, her school. Olivia listened with a small smile, occasionally responding but mostly just seeming overwhelmed by the whirlwind that was Emma. James watched them in the rearview mirror and felt something shift in his chest. Whether or not the DNA test confirmed it, these two girls had already bonded. Emma had decided Olivia was her sister, and once Emma decided something, there was no changing her mind. She'd gotten that stubbornness from Sarah, too. At the hotel, the manager himself came out to greet them, clearly having been briefed by Margaret about treating this guest with extra care. They were escorted to a luxury suite on the top floor, the kind usually reserved for visiting celebrities and foreign dignitaries. Olivia walked into the suite and just stopped, staring at the space with wide eyes. It had a living room, a bedroom with a king-size bed, a marble bathroom bigger than most apartments, and windows overlooking the lake. "This is too much," Olivia said, shaking her head. "I can't stay here. This probably costs more per night than I've spent on food all month." James set the bags down on the couch. "You're staying here. End of discussion. Room service is available 24 hours. Order whatever you want, as much as you want. There are clothes in these bags. Tomorrow we'll go shopping for more if you need them. Toiletries are in the bathroom." He pulled out his wallet and handed Olivia a credit card. "This is for emergencies. Use it if you need anything." Olivia stared at the card like it might bite her. "I can't take your credit card. What if I run away with it? What if I'm lying about everything and this is all just a scam to rob you?" She thrust it back at him. "You're being too trusting. You don't know me." James gently pushed her hand back. "If you were running a scam, you wouldn't be saying that. And if you do take the card and disappear, then I'll know the DNA test was unnecessary. But I don't think you will. I think you're exactly who you say you are." Emma had discovered the suite's entertainment system and was demanding that her daddy turn on cartoons. James set her up with her favorite show, then turned back to Olivia. "I need to take Emma home. She has school tomorrow and her bedtime routine is sacred or she's a terror the next day." He smiled softly. "But I'll be back in the morning to check on you. Is there anything you need right now? Anything at all?" Olivia looked around the suite, at the comfort and safety she hadn't experienced in months, and her eyes filled with tears again. "I need to know this is real," she said quietly. "I keep thinking I'm going to wake up on a bench somewhere and realize this was all a dream. The nice man who believes me, the little girl who wants me to be her sister, the hotel room, the food, all of it. It feels too good to be true." James understood that feeling. He'd felt it himself when he first met Sarah, like happiness that pure couldn't possibly last. And he'd been right in a way. It hadn't lasted. She'd been taken from him far too soon. But that didn't mean the happiness hadn't been real while it existed. "It's real," he promised Olivia. "And I'm not going anywhere. Even if the DNA test somehow says you're not Sarah's biological daughter, even if there's been some mistake, you're not going back on the street. We'll figure something out." Olivia walked over to him and did something that surprised them both. She hugged him. It was quick and awkward, like she was out of practice with human affection, but it was genuine. "Thank you," she whispered. "Nobody's ever just helped me before without wanting something in return. I don't know how to process this." James hugged her back carefully, feeling how thin she was under the new clothes. "You don't have to process anything right now. Just rest. Eat. Be safe. We'll take everything else one step at a time." Emma came running over and inserted herself into the hug, wrapping her small arms around both of them. "Group hug," she announced, and all three of them stood there for a moment in the hotel suite, this strange almost family brought together by impossible circumstances. When they finally pulled apart, James saw that Olivia was smiling, a real smile that reached her eyes and transformed her whole face. For just a moment she looked her age instead of like someone who'd lived 1,000 hard years. After James and Emma left, Olivia stood alone in the suite and felt the silence press in around her. She walked slowly through each room, touching things gently like they might vanish. The soft couch, the thick carpet, the fluffy towels in the bathroom. She turned on the shower and stood under hot water for the first time in months, watching dirt and grime swirl down the drain. She washed her hair 3 times, scrubbed her skin until it was pink and clean, and just stood there letting the heat soak into her bones. When she finally got out, she wrapped herself in a bathrobe that was softer than anything she'd ever felt and ordered room service. She didn't know what half the items on the menu were, so she just ordered one of everything that sounded good. When the card arrived, the server didn't bat an eye at the teenage girl in a luxury suite ordering enough food for 5 people. He just set it all up on the table and wished her a pleasant evening. Olivia ate until her stomach hurt, trying foods she'd never tasted before. Real steak, fresh vegetables, desserts that probably cost more than her GED exam fee. She saved half of everything. Old habits from the street making her hoard food even though she knew more was available whenever she wanted it. Then she climbed into the enormous bed with its Egyptian cotton sheets and down pillows and tried to sleep. But sleep wouldn't come. Her mind kept racing, replaying the day's events like a movie she couldn't quite believe she'd starred in. James drove home with Emma chattering in the back seat about her new sister. "Daddy, when can Olivia come live with us? Our house is really big. She could have the guest room next to mine, and then we could have sleepovers every night." Emma's enthusiasm was infectious, but James knew they needed to slow down. "Sweetheart, we need to wait for the test results first. We need to make sure Olivia really is related to Mommy." He tried to explain in terms a 5-year-old would understand. "Remember when you wanted to adopt that dog at the shelter, but we needed to make sure you weren't allergic first? It's like that." Emma crossed her arms in that stubborn way that reminded James so much of Sarah. "I already know she's my sister. I don't need a test to tell me. She has Mommy's eyes and Mommy's smile, and she's nice and sad like Mommy used to get sometimes. That's enough for me." Out of the mouths of babes, James thought. Emma had always been perceptive beyond her years, picking up on emotional currents that adults tried to hide. Maybe she was right. Maybe some things you just knew in your heart, without needing science to confirm them. When they got home, Emma's nanny, Miss Chen, was waiting anxiously. James had called her earlier to explain the situation and apologize for Emma bringing home a stranger. Miss Chen, who'd been with them since Emma was born, took it in stride. "That girl has your wife's heart," she said, gesturing to Emma, "always wanting to save everyone. You can't be mad at her for that." James assured her he wasn't mad, just concerned about safety. They'd need to have a talk about stranger danger, but not tonight. Tonight, everyone was too emotionally wrung out. After Emma was bathed and tucked into bed, James went to his study and pulled out the box he kept in his desk. Inside were all of Sarah's personal effects from when she died. Her jewelry, her sketchbooks, her journals. He'd been through them 100 times in those first terrible months after her death, reading her words and trying to feel close to her again. But now he looked through them with new eyes, searching for any mention of Olivia, any hint of the secret Sarah had kept. He found it in a journal from 2 years before she died, a single entry dated on Emma's 3rd birthday. "Watching Emma blow out her candles today, I couldn't help thinking about her. My first daughter, the one I gave up. She would be 15 now, almost grown. Does she know I exist? Does she think about me? Does she hate me for giving her away? I want to find her so badly, but I'm terrified. What if she doesn't want to know me? What if I've already lost my chance? Maybe it's better to let sleeping dogs lie. Maybe she's happy and finding her would just cause pain. But God, I wish I could see her just once. Tell her I'm sorry. Tell her I never stopped loving her." James had to set the journal down, his hands shaking. Sarah had known. She'd thought about finding Olivia. She'd wanted to reach out but been too afraid. If she'd lived, would she have eventually worked up the courage? Would Olivia have met her mother, heard her voice, been told she was loved? The what-ifs were torture. He kept reading and found more entries scattered through the years, always on Emma's birthday or Mother's Day. Sarah's private grief over the daughter she'd given up, the guilt she carried, the love that never died. In the last journal entry before Emma was born, Sarah had written something that made James's heart stop. "If something happens to me during this birth, if I don't make it, I need to write this down. I have another daughter. Her name is Olivia Grace Morgan. I gave her up for adoption when I was 17. If anyone ever finds this, if she ever comes looking, please tell her I loved her. Please tell her giving her up was the hardest thing I ever did. Please help her if she needs it. Make sure she knows she was wanted." It was like Sarah had known, like some part of her had prepared for this moment, leaving breadcrumbs for him to find. James pulled out his phone and took pictures of the journal entries. Evidence. Proof that Olivia's story matched Sarah's secret history. Even before the DNA test came back, he knew in his gut that Olivia was telling the truth. No one could fake that kind of detail, that specific knowledge. And those eyes, those impossible, beautiful eyes that haunted him every time he looked at Emma. He called his lawyer, waking him up despite the late hour. "Robert, I need you to prepare some documents for me. Guardianship papers, emergency custody arrangements, and I want to set up a trust fund. Yes, tonight. I'll explain everything tomorrow, but I need it ready as soon as possible. Robert sputtered about needing more information, but James cut him off. I may have just found out I have a 17-year-old stepdaughter who's been living on the street. I need to be able to make legal decisions for her if necessary. Just draw up the papers. After he hung up, James sat in the quiet study surrounded by Sarah's journals and felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. If Olivia really was Sarah's daughter, then she was his responsibility now. Sarah would expect him to take care of her, protect her, give her the life she'd wanted for her. And even if the impossible happened and the DNA test somehow came back negative, James knew he couldn't just walk away. He'd already promised Olivia she wouldn't go back to the street, and he was a man of his word. He thought about his own parents, long dead now, and how they'd taught him that family wasn't just about blood. It was about showing up, about keeping your promises, about helping people who needed it even when it was inconvenient. His father had been a carpenter who'd made a fortune in construction by treating his workers like family. His mother had fostered dozens of kids over the years, giving them stability until they could find permanent homes. James had built his fortune, but his parents had built his character, and they'd be ashamed of him if he turned his back on a kid who needed help, regardless of what any test said. The next morning, James was up at dawn. He checked his phone obsessively, as if the DNA results might come through early. They wouldn't. He knew. Dr. Peterson had said 48 hours minimum. That meant another full day and night of waiting, of wondering, of existing in this strange limbo between his old life and whatever came next. He made coffee and sat in his kitchen watching the sunrise and thinking about Sarah. She'd loved this time of day, often waking early to paint while the light was soft and golden. Emma came bouncing into the kitchen at 7, already dressed and demanding breakfast. "Can we go see Olivia today? Please, Daddy. I want to show her my school and my favorite bakery and the park where Mommy used to take me before she died." Emma's casual mention of Sarah's death always caught James off guard. She'd been too young to remember her mother, had grown up with Sarah's memory as a kind of beloved ghost in their home. Photos everywhere, stories told by James and Miss Chen, but no real memories of her own. "After school," James promised, "I'll pick you up and we'll go visit Olivia together. But sweetheart, I need you to understand something important." He knelt down to Emma's level. "Olivia has been through really hard times. She might be sad or quiet or scared. She might not want to play right away. You need to be patient with her, okay? Not everyone had the easy childhood you've had." Emma nodded seriously. "I know, Daddy. That's why we need to help her. That's what Mommy would do." She grabbed her backpack and headed for the door where Miss Chen was waiting. "Love you, don't forget to pick me up." And then she was gone in a whirlwind of pink and enthusiasm, leaving James smiling despite his anxiety. Emma's absolute certainty that everything would work out was both comforting and terrifying. What if the test came back negative? What if Olivia wasn't Sarah's daughter after all? Would Emma understand? Would she be devastated? James showered and dressed, choosing casual clothes instead of his usual suit. Today wasn't about business. Today was about figuring out how to integrate a traumatized teenager into his life without making everything worse. He drove to the Hilton and called Olivia's room from the lobby. She answered on the 4th ring, her voice thick with sleep. "Hello?" she said cautiously. "It's James. I'm downstairs. Can I come up?" There was a pause. "You really came back? I thought maybe yesterday was a dream." When James knocked on her door a few minutes later, Olivia answered, looking completely different from the day before. She'd showered again, her hair was clean and brushed, and she was wearing one of the outfits Margaret had bought. She looked like any normal teenage girl, except for the haunted look in her eyes and the healing bruises on her face. "Did you sleep?" James asked. Olivia shook her head. "Not really. Too comfortable. I kept waking up thinking I needed to move before someone kicked me out of wherever I was." James ached for her. "That's going to take time to get used to. But you're safe here. No one's going to kick you out or hurt you." He held up a bag from a local bakery. "I brought breakfast. Real breakfast. Not just whatever room service you ordered last night." They sat together at the suite's dining table and ate croissants and fresh fruit. James asked gentle questions about her life, her time in foster care, her plans for the future. Olivia answered haltingly at first, still clearly waiting for the other shoe to drop. "I want to go to college," she admitted quietly. "Is that stupid? A foster kid with no money and no family thinking about college?" James shook his head firmly. "It's not stupid at all. It's ambitious and smart. What do you want to study? Olivia's face lit up for the first time. Art. I want to study art. I know it's not practical, I know everyone says artists starve, but I've always loved drawing and painting. It's the only thing that kept me sane in the bad foster homes. I could draw and escape to somewhere better. James felt his throat tighten. Sarah was an artist, a really talented one. She had showings in galleries all over Chicago. Her paintings are in museums now. He pulled out his phone and showed Olivia pictures of Sarah's work. Abstract pieces full of color and emotion, landscapes that seemed to breathe, portraits that captured something essential about their subjects. Olivia stared at the images with hunger in her eyes. She was amazing. I wish I could have seen them in person. I wish I could have learned from her. You still can, James said. I have all her sketchbooks, her notes about techniques, her favorite books about art history. They're yours if you want them. And once we get everything sorted, I'll pay for art school. Not because you might be Sarah's daughter, but because you have talent and passion and you deserve the chance to develop it. He meant every word. Even if the DNA test somehow came back negative, he was going to make sure this girl got her education. Olivia's eyes filled with tears. Why are you doing this? Nobody in my whole life has ever just helped me without wanting something back. What do you want from me? Her voice was raw with pain and suspicion born from years of being let down. James met her eyes steadily. I don't want anything from you. I want things for you. I want you to be safe. I want you to get your education. I want you to know you're not alone anymore, that's all. But what if the test is negative? Olivia asked, voicing the fear that had been lurking unspoken between them. What if I'm not actually Sarah's daughter? What if I'm wrong about everything and this was all just a weird coincidence? James leaned forward. Then we'll figure it out. Maybe Sarah knew your biological mother and that's why you have similar features. Maybe there's some other explanation. But regardless, you're a kid who needs help, and I'm someone who can help. That's enough. They spent the morning talking. Really talking. Olivia opened up about her life in ways James suspected she never had before. She told him about the good foster homes, the ones where people genuinely tried to help. And she told him about the bad ones, the ones where fostering was just a paycheck, where kids were warehoused and neglected. She told him about the group homes where older kids preyed on younger ones, where staff looked the other way rather than deal with problems. She told him about aging out at 18, the terror of suddenly being an adult with no preparation and no support system. Most of the kids I knew from foster care ended up homeless or in jail or dead, Olivia said matter-of-factly. The statistics are terrible. Only like 3% of us make it to college. Most don't even finish high school. I know I'm one of the lucky ones because I'm still alive and still trying, but it's so hard sometimes, so exhausting, always fighting just to survive. James listened to it all, his heart breaking with each new revelation. This was America in the 21st century, and kids were still falling through the cracks like this. He'd donated to charities, written checks to organizations that claimed to help foster youth, but he'd never really thought about the human cost. Never met someone who'd actually lived it. I'm going to help you, he said when she finally fell silent. Not just with college money or a hotel room. Real help. Stability. If you want it. Olivia looked at him with desperate hope. What do you mean? James took a deep breath, making a decision that would change everything. I mean that regardless of what the DNA test says, I want to offer you a place in our family. Legal guardianship until you turn 18. Then support for college and beyond. A real home, Olivia. Not temporary, not conditional on test results. A home. Olivia stared at him like he'd lost his mind. You don't even know me. You met me yesterday. How can you just decide something like that? She stood up and paced to the window, her arms wrapped around herself defensively. This is crazy. People don't just adopt 17-year-olds they found on the street. There has to be a catch. What's the catch? James stood up too but kept his distance, letting her have space. No catch. I'm offering because it's the right thing to do. Because Sarah would have wanted it. Because Emma has already decided you're her sister. And arguing with a 5-year-old about family is a losing battle. And because you remind me of Sarah when we first met. She was alone too, cut off from her family, trying to make it on her own. I helped her then. Let me help you now. Before Olivia could respond, James's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and saw it was Robert, his lawyer. I need to take this, he said apologetically. He stepped into the suite's bedroom for privacy. Robert, what do you have for me? The lawyer's voice was professional but concerned. I've drawn up the guardianship papers and the trust fund documents like you asked. But James, we need to talk about this. Taking in a 17-year-old you just met, especially one who might have a claim on Sarah's estate, is legally complicated. We need to do background checks, verify her story, protect your interests, and Emma's interests. James cut him off. Robert, I appreciate your concern, but I've made up my mind. Draw up the papers. I'll deal with the legal complications as they come. This girl has been failed by every system meant to protect her. I'm not going to be another person who lets her down because of paperwork and liability concerns. Robert sighed heavily. At least let me do a basic background check. Make sure she is who she says she is. It'll take a few hours, and it protects everyone involved. James agreed to that much and hung up. When he returned to the living room, Olivia was still standing by the window, staring out at the city below. My lawyer wants to do a background check on you, James said honestly. Just to verify your identity and make sure your story checks out, is that okay? Olivia nodded slowly. That's smart. You should check. I'd be suspicious too if I were you. She turned to face him. What happens if something in my background makes you change your mind about helping me? Nothing in your past is going to change my mind, James said firmly. You were a kid in a broken system. Whatever happened, whatever you had to do to survive, that's not your fault. He walked over to stand beside her at the window. I meant what I said, Olivia. I'm offering you a home. A real one. I know it's fast. I know it's crazy. But sometimes life gives you these moments where you have to just make a choice and deal with the consequences later. This is one of those moments for me. Olivia was quiet for a long time, processing everything. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I want to say yes. I want to trust you. But I'm scared. What if I mess everything up? What if I'm too damaged to fit into a normal family? What if Emma ends up hating me? What if you realize you made a mistake? Her vulnerability was heartbreaking. James could see all the walls she'd built to protect herself, and how terrifying it was for her to even consider letting them down. Then we'll figure it out together, James said. I'm not expecting you to be perfect. I'm not expecting you to magically fit into our lives without any bumps. Therapy will probably help. Time will definitely help, but Olivia, you deserve a chance. Let me give you that chance. He extended his hand to her. What do you say? Will you let me help you? Olivia looked at his hand for a long moment, tears streaming down her face. Then slowly she reached out and took it. Yes, she whispered. Yes, please. I want a family. I want to belong somewhere. I'm so tired of being alone. James pulled her into a hug, and she collapsed against him, sobbing. All the fear and pain and loneliness she'd been carrying came pouring out. James just held her, letting her cry, remembering how Sarah used to say that sometimes the bravest thing you could do was let someone help you. They spent the rest of the morning making plans. James called his lawyer back and told him to expedite the guardianship paperwork. He called Margaret and asked her to clear his schedule for the rest of the week. He called the best trauma therapist in Chicago and booked an emergency appointment for Olivia. Then he called Emma's school and got permission to pick her up early. We're going shopping, James announced. You need clothes, school supplies, toiletries, all the basics, and then we're picking up Emma and having lunch together. The three of us. Olivia looked overwhelmed. I don't need all that. The clothes Margaret bought are plenty. James shook his head. You need more than 3 outfits. You need winter clothes, pajamas, shoes, everything a normal teenager has. We're doing this right. They drove to an upscale mall, and James watched Olivia's discomfort grow as they walked through expensive stores. She kept looking at price tags and wincing, refusing to pick anything out. This is too much, she kept saying. I can't let you spend this kind of money on me. Finally, James had to be direct. Olivia, look at me. I'm a wealthy man. I can afford this. More importantly, if you're going to be my daughter, you need to understand that I take care of my family. That means making sure you have what you need. So stop looking at prices and start picking out things you actually like, okay? Olivia bit her lip but nodded. Slowly, hesitantly, she started selecting items. Jeans, sweaters, a warm winter coat. James added things she didn't pick. Practical items like socks and underwear and pajamas. He also threw in some art supplies when he saw her eyeing them in a store window. By the time they were done, they had enough bags to fill the trunk of his car. Olivia looked shell-shocked. I've never had this much stuff before, she admitted. In foster care, you learn to pack your whole life into one trash bag because you never know when you'll have to move. This is more than I've owned in my entire life combined. The casual way she said it, like it was normal to own so little, broke James's heart all over again. They drove to Emma's school, and James went inside to sign her out early. Emma came bouncing out of her classroom with her usual energy, but stopped dead when she saw Olivia waiting in the car. Her face lit up with pure joy. "Olivia, you came back. Daddy said you would, but I wasn't sure." She climbed into the back seat and immediately started showing Olivia her school projects and telling her about her day. Olivia listened with a soft smile, clearly overwhelmed by Emma's enthusiasm, but also charmed by it. They went to Emma's favorite restaurant, a family-friendly place with good burgers and milkshakes. Emma ordered for everyone without being asked, declaring that Olivia needed to try the chocolate shake because it was the best in the whole city. As they ate, James watched his two daughters interact. Emma was completely uninhibited, chattering away and asking Olivia a million questions. Olivia was more reserved but gradually opening up, especially when Emma asked about her art. "You draw? Can you draw me? Please, please, please?" Emma begged. Olivia smiled and asked the waiter for some crayons. On the back of Emma's paper placemat, she sketched a quick portrait of the little girl. It was good, really good. She'd captured Emma's expression perfectly, the mischievous glint in her eye and the gap where she'd lost her front tooth. "That's amazing," Emma squealed. "Daddy, look. She made me look so pretty." James looked at the drawing and felt a chill run down his spine. The style was eerily similar to Sarah's sketching style. The way Olivia held the crayon, the quick, confident strokes, the attention to capturing emotion rather than just physical features. It was exactly how Sarah had drawn. "Where did you learn to draw like that?" he asked Olivia. She shrugged. "I don't know. I've just always drawn this way. Nobody taught me. It just feels natural." Nature versus nurture, James thought. If Olivia really was Sarah's biological daughter, had she inherited some of Sarah's artistic talent? Or was it just coincidence? He couldn't wait for the DNA results anymore. He needed to know for certain. As if reading his mind, his phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Peterson. Results came back early. "Can you come to my office in 1 hour?" James's heart started pounding. This was it, the moment of truth. James tried to act normal for Emma's sake, but his hands were shaking as he paid the check. "Girls, we need to make a quick stop at Dr. Peterson's office," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. Emma bounced in her seat. "Are we sick?" "I don't feel sick." James forced a smile. "No, honey. The doctor just needs to talk to us about the test we took yesterday. Remember?" Emma nodded, but Olivia had gone pale. She knew what this meant. The DNA results were ready. The drive to Dr. Peterson's office felt like it took forever and no time at all. James kept glancing at Olivia in the rearview mirror. She was staring out the window, her hands clenched in her lap so tight her knuckles were white. Emma kept up her usual chatter, completely oblivious to the tension. When they arrived at the medical building, James had to take a deep breath before getting out of the car. This was it. Everything was about to change, one way or another. Dr. Peterson's receptionist led them straight back to his private office. The doctor stood up when they entered, his expression carefully neutral. "James, girls, please sit down." They settled into chairs, Emma swinging her legs happily, while Olivia looked like she might throw up. James reached over and took Olivia's hand, giving it a reassuring squeeze. "Whatever it says, we're going to be okay," he whispered to her. Dr. Peterson opened a folder on his desk and looked at James seriously. "I ran the DNA test twice, just to be absolutely certain. The results are conclusive." He paused, and James felt his heart stop. Olivia Grace Morgan is biologically related to Emma Richardson. They share a maternal connection. Based on the genetic markers, they are half-sisters. Same mother, different fathers. The words hung in the air for a moment. Then Emma let out a whoop of joy. "I knew it. I told you she was my sister, Daddy." Olivia had tears streaming down her face, but she was smiling. A real, genuine smile that transformed her entire face. "I'm really her daughter? Sarah's daughter? You're sure?" Dr. Peterson nodded kindly. "I'm absolutely certain. You and Emma share approximately 25% of your DNA, which is consistent with half-siblings. There's no doubt." He pulled out the official report and handed it to James. "I've documented everything. This is legally admissible evidence of the biological relationship." James stared at the paper, seeing the numbers and charts but barely processing them. Sarah had a daughter. Olivia was Sarah's daughter, Emma's sister, his stepdaughter. Everything Olivia had said was true. The letter, the story, all of it. Sarah had given birth to a baby girl at 17, given her up for adoption, and carried that secret until her death. And now that daughter was sitting in his office crying tears of relief and joy. "Olivia," James said, his own voice thick with emotion, "welcome to the family." He pulled her into a hug, and she clung to him like a drowning person clinging to a life raft. Emma climbed up and wormed her way into the hug, creating a 3-person huddle in the middle of Dr. Peterson's office. "We're sisters. We're really sisters," Emma kept repeating, her joy so pure it made everyone laugh through their tears. Dr. Peterson discreetly stepped out to give them privacy, and for several minutes they just held each other. Finally, James pulled back and looked at Olivia seriously. "Okay, so here's what happens now. My lawyer has already drawn up guardianship papers. We're going to make this official. You're going to come live with us. You're going to finish your GED, apply to art schools, and most importantly, you're going to be safe. No more streets, no more shelters, no more fighting alone. Understood?" Olivia nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. Emma grabbed her hand and said, "And you're going to sleep in the room next to mine, and we're going to have breakfast together every day, and I'll show you all of Mommy's paintings, and we can look at pictures of her together." The simple, childlike vision of their future was exactly what they all needed. No complicated emotions or logistics, just the basic promise of being together as a family. The next few days passed in a whirlwind of activity. James's lawyer, Robert, handled the legal paperwork with impressive efficiency. Since Olivia was 17 and had no legal guardian, and since the DNA test proved she was Sarah's biological daughter, the guardianship process was straightforward. James was officially named as her legal guardian until she turned 18, with full authority to make decisions about her education, health care, and welfare. He also set up a trust fund in her name, matching the one he'd created for Emma, ensuring both his daughters would be provided for. They moved Olivia out of the hotel and into the Richardson mansion. Emma had been right about the guest room next to hers being perfect. It was a large, sunny room with windows overlooking the garden. James had it completely redecorated in just 2 days, bringing in interior designers who worked around the clock. They created a space that was part bedroom, part art studio, with an easel by the window, shelves for supplies, and good natural light for painting. When Olivia first saw it, she burst into tears again. "I keep crying," she apologized, wiping her eyes. "I'm not usually this emotional. I think I'm just overwhelmed." James put his arm around her shoulders. "You're allowed to be overwhelmed. Your entire life just changed. That's a lot to process." He showed her the closet, now filled with the clothes they'd bought and more that Margaret had ordered. The bathroom stocked with toiletries and towels. The desk with a new laptop for her schoolwork. "This is your space, your home, for as long as you want it." Emma appointed herself as Olivia's official tour guide, dragging her through every room of the mansion and explaining its history. "This is where Daddy keeps his boring work stuff. This is the kitchen where Rosa makes the best cookies. This is the library where all of Mommy's art books are. This is the garden where Mommy used to paint." She saved the best for last, pulling Olivia into what had been Sarah's studio. James had kept it exactly as Sarah left it, unable to bring himself to change anything. The studio was a shrine to Sarah's creativity. Finished paintings leaned against walls. Sketches covered a bulletin board. Her paints and brushes sat on the table, as if she might walk in any moment and pick up where she left off. Olivia walked through the space reverently, touching things gently. She stopped in front of a self-portrait Sarah had painted while pregnant with Emma. "She was beautiful," Olivia whispered. "I look like her, don't I?" James nodded, his throat tight. "You have her eyes, her smile, her talent. Yes, you look like her." Olivia turned to him with an expression of desperate longing. "Tell me about her. Everything you remember. I want to know who she was." So James did. They sat in Sarah's studio. Emma curled up between them and James told stories. He told Olivia about meeting Sarah at an art gallery, how she'd been standing in front of her own painting criticizing it while the curator tried to convince her it was perfect. He told her about their first date, a disaster where he tried to impress her with an expensive restaurant and she'd rather they get hot dogs from a street vendor. He told her about Sarah's laugh, loud and infectious, about her terrible singing voice that she unleashed anyway, about how she painted barefoot, getting colors all over her feet, about her kindness to strangers, her fierce loyalty to friends, her absolute conviction that art could heal the world. He told her about the pregnancy with Emma, how Sarah had been terrified and excited in equal measure, how she'd painted the nursery herself, creating a mural of fairy tales and dreams. And then James told Olivia the hardest part, about the complications during Emma's birth, the hemorrhaging that wouldn't stop, the frantic doctors and beeping machines, about holding Sarah's hand while she bled out, about her last words being, "Take care of our baby girl," about trying to be both mother and father to Emma while drowning in his own grief, about the guilt he felt for being angry at Sarah for leaving him, even though he knew it wasn't her fault. "I'm sorry," Olivia said quietly when he finished. "I'm sorry you lost her. I'm sorry Emma never got to know her. I'm sorry I never got to know her either." James wiped his eyes and tried to smile. "I'm sorry too. But you know what Sarah would say if she were here? She'd say we're not allowed to waste time being sad about what we can't change. She'd tell us to focus on what we have right now. And right now, we have each other. You, me, and Emma. We're a family, Olivia. A weird, unconventional, thrown-together family, but a real one." He stood up and held out his hand. "Come on, let me show you something else." He led her to his study and pulled out all of Sarah's journals. "These are yours now. Her thoughts, her private words, her secrets. I read them after she died, trying to feel close to her, but they should be yours. She wrote about you in here, about loving you and missing you and wanting to find you. You should read her words." Olivia took the journals with trembling hands, clutching them to her chest like they were the most precious things in the world. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for everything." That night, Olivia sat up in her new bedroom, reading Sarah's journals by lamplight. She read her mother's words, traced the handwriting with her fingers, cried over the entries where Sarah wondered about her lost daughter. She fell asleep with the journals clutched in her arms, finally feeling connected to the woman who gave her life, finally feeling like she knew where she came from, finally feeling like she belonged. The next morning, James enrolled Olivia in the local high school to finish her senior year. The principal had been skeptical at first, given Olivia's spotty educational history and long absences from traditional schooling. But when James explained the situation and wrote a generous check for the school's art program, they suddenly became very accommodating. Olivia would start classes the following week, giving her time to adjust to her new life. James also arranged for the trauma therapist, Dr. Linda Hernandez, to meet with Olivia twice a week. The therapy sessions were hard. Olivia had years of trauma to unpack: abandonment issues, trust issues, survival mechanisms that had kept her alive but weren't healthy long-term. Dr. Hernandez worked with her gently, helping her understand that she was safe now, that she could let her guard down, that not every kindness had ulterior motives. James sat in on some sessions when invited, learning how to help Olivia navigate her new life without overwhelming her. One evening, about 2 weeks after the DNA results came back, James found Olivia in Sarah's studio. She'd started painting using her mother's supplies, working on a canvas that showed 2 little girls holding hands under a starry sky. "That's beautiful," James said softly, not wanting to startle her. Olivia turned and smiled. She'd been smiling more lately, and it transformed her face every time. "It's me and Emma. I thought maybe I could give it to her for her birthday next month." James came closer to study the painting. Olivia had real talent, raw and untrained but unmistakable. "Your mother would be so proud of you," he said honestly. "Not just your art, but your strength, everything you survived, and you're still here, still trying, still creating beautiful things. That takes courage." Olivia set down her brush and looked at him seriously. "Can I ask you something? Why did you really do all this? The DNA test proved I'm Sarah's daughter, but you were helping me before you knew that. Why?" James considered his answer carefully. "Because 5 years ago I made a promise to my dying wife that I would take care of our baby girl. I thought that meant Emma, but now I realize it meant both of you. Sarah loved you, Olivia. She carried guilt about giving you up for 17 years. If she'd lived, she would have found you eventually. I'm just doing what she would have done." He paused. "But also I did it because it was the right thing to do. Sometimes that's reason enough." Olivia hugged him then. A real hug. Not the desperate clinging of those first days, but something warmer and more comfortable. "Thank you for being my dad," she said quietly. I know I'm not really your daughter, not biologically, but if you'll have me, I'd like to think of you that way. James felt his heart swell. Olivia, you are my daughter. Biology doesn't matter. You're Emma's sister, which makes you my daughter. That's how family works. The following Monday, Olivia started at her new school. James drove her on her first day, with Emma insisting on coming along for moral support. Olivia was terrified, convinced that everyone would see right through her, would know she was foster trash pretending to be a rich kid. But James squeezed her hand before she got out of the car. You belong here just as much as anyone else. Hold your head high. You're Olivia Richardson now. She'd officially changed her last name as part of the guardianship process, taking the family name. The first day was rough. Olivia felt out of place among kids who'd never known hunger or homelessness. She sat alone at lunch, overwhelmed by the normalcy of it all. But then a girl from her art class, Maya, sat down next to her. Hey, you're the new girl, right? I saw your sketch in class. You're really talented. That simple gesture of friendliness opened the door. By the end of the week, Olivia had a small group of friends, kids who appreciated her art and didn't ask too many questions about her past. At home, life settled into a routine. Emma insisted on eating breakfast with Olivia every morning, chattering about her day ahead. James made sure to have family dinners together as often as his work allowed. Olivia slowly learned to accept help without suspicion, to trust that this wasn't temporary, to believe she deserved the good things happening to her. She still had bad days, moments where old trauma resurfaced, but Dr. Hernandez and James helped her through them. One Saturday afternoon, about a month after Olivia moved in, James found her in the garden painting while Emma played nearby. It was a perfect domestic scene, peaceful and ordinary in the best possible way. He sat down on the bench and just watched them for a while, his daughters together. Emma noticed him first and came running over. Daddy, Olivia's teaching me how to paint. Look what I made. She held up a canvas covered in enthusiastic but chaotic colors. It's beautiful, sweetheart, James said honestly. You're learning from the best. Emma beamed and ran back to her easel. Olivia looked over at James and smiled. She has your patience and Sarah's creativity. She's going to be something special when she grows up. James nodded. She already is. You both are. He stood up and walked over to look at Olivia's canvas. She was painting the garden, capturing the way afternoon light filtered through the trees. It was reminiscent of Sarah's style, but uniquely Olivia's too. You should think about which art schools you want to apply to. I'll take you to visit any of them you're interested in. Olivia set down her brush and looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. I've been thinking about that. About college and the future and everything. She paused. James, I need you to know something. I don't expect you to pay for everything forever. I know you offered and I'm grateful, but I don't want to be a burden. I'm going to get a job, start saving money. I want to contribute. James shook his head firmly. You're not a burden, Olivia. You're my daughter, and daughters don't pay rent in their own homes. Your job right now is to focus on school, on healing, on building the future you want. Let me handle the rest. He could see her struggling with it, the ingrained independence that came from years of relying only on herself. I know it's hard for you to accept help, but this is what families do. They support each other. So please, let me support you. Olivia nodded slowly, and James saw her eyes fill with tears again. Happy tears this time. I'm still not used to this, being part of a family, having someone who cares what happens to me. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night and have to look around my room to make sure it's real, that I'm really here. She wiped her eyes. But I'm getting better. Dr. Hernandez says it'll take time for my brain to accept that I'm safe now, that not everyone is going to abandon me. We're not going anywhere, James promised. You're stuck with us now. Emma, overhearing, came running back and threw her arms around both of them. Family hug, she declared, and they stood there in the garden, the three of them, holding each other. This strange little family that had come together through tragedy and luck and determination. Not perfect, not conventional, but real and loving, and theirs. As autumn turned to winter, their family dynamics continued to evolve. Olivia's 18th birthday came, a milestone that would have meant aging out of the system entirely if James hadn't intervened. Instead, they threw her a party, her first real birthday celebration ever. James invited Olivia's new friends from school, some kids from Emma's class, Dr. Hernandez, Margaret, and even some of Sarah's old artist friends who'd heard about Olivia and wanted to meet her. The house was full of laughter and music. Emma had insisted on making the decorations herself, creating a masterpiece of construction paper and glitter. Olivia wore a new dress that Margaret had helped her pick out, and for once, she didn't look uncomfortable in nice clothes. She looked happy, genuinely, radiantly happy. When it came time to cut the cake, Emma made everyone sing twice because once wasn't enough for her big sister's first real birthday. Later, after most of the guests had left, James gave Olivia her present. It was a set of professional artist supplies, the expensive kind Sarah had used, along with a letter of acceptance to the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. "You applied?" Olivia asked, shocked. James shook his head, smiling. "You applied. You just didn't know it. I may have helped fill out the paperwork and arrange the portfolio review, but the work that got you accepted was all yours. They saw your paintings and wanted you immediately." Olivia stared at the acceptance letter, reading it over and over like it might disappear. "I got into art school. I'm going to art school. Me, the foster kid who lived on the street." She started laughing and crying at the same time. "Sarah would be so happy, she'd be so proud." James pulled her into a hug. "She is proud. Wherever she is, she's watching you and she's proud. I know it." The winter brought its own challenges. Olivia had nightmares sometimes, waking up screaming about being back on the street or trapped in a bad foster home. James learned to recognize the signs, learned how to calm her down without making her feel weak or broken. Emma, with a child's adaptability, learned to be gentle when Olivia was having a bad day, somehow knowing when her sister needed space and when she needed company. They established traditions, the kind of normal family traditions Olivia had never experienced. Sunday morning pancakes that James made from scratch, flower fights in the kitchen included. Friday movie nights where Emma picked increasingly ridiculous animated films, and Olivia pretended to complain but secretly loved them. Saturday afternoons in Sarah's studio, now truly their studio, where Olivia painted and Emma created increasingly elaborate craft projects, and James worked on his laptop nearby, just wanting to be close to his daughters. One evening in early December, James called both girls into the living room for what he termed a family meeting. Olivia immediately tensed, old instincts kicking in. Family meetings in foster care usually meant bad news, meant you were being moved again. But James quickly reassured her. "It's good news, I promise. Sit down." Once they were settled on the couch, he pulled out a folder. "I've been working with my lawyers on something important." He looked at Olivia seriously. "Right now I'm your legal guardian. That's a good arrangement, but it's temporary in a sense. It expires legally once you're 19, and it doesn't give you the same standing as Emma in terms of family legal rights. So I'd like to propose something different." He handed her a document. "I want to officially adopt you, make you my daughter legally, permanently, with all the rights and responsibilities that entails. What do you think?" Olivia's hands shook as she read the adoption papers. "You want to adopt me? But I'm already 18, I'm legally an adult, why would you go through all this?" James smiled gently. "Because family isn't just about legal obligation, it's about choice. I'm choosing you, Olivia. I'm choosing to be your father, officially and permanently. No expiration date, no conditions, you'd be my daughter in every way that matters." Emma bounced excitedly on the couch. "Say yes. Say yes. Then we'll really truly be sisters forever and ever." Olivia looked between James and Emma, these two people who'd changed her entire life in just a few short months. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I want that. I want to be part of this family officially. I want you to be my dad." She looked at James with tears streaming down her face. "Are you sure? Are you absolutely sure you want to do this?" James reached over and took her hand. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life, except maybe marrying Sarah, and we both know how well that turned out." He smiled. "You're already my daughter in my heart, Olivia. This just makes it official on paper. So yeah, I'm sure. The question is, are you ready to be a Richardson permanently? Fair warning, Emma's going to be even more unbearable once it's official." "Hey!" Emma protested, but she was giggling. Olivia pulled them both into a hug, and they sat there on the couch tangled together. This family that shouldn't exist by any logical standard but did anyway. Built not on blood or legal obligation, but on choice, on compassion, on the decision to show up for each other no matter what. "I'm ready," Olivia said firmly. I'm ready to be part of this family forever. The adoption was finalized in January, a quiet ceremony in a judge's chambers. Olivia Grace Morgan officially became Olivia Grace Richardson, Emma's legal sister and James's legal daughter. The judge, a woman in her 60s who'd seen countless adoption cases, smiled warmly as she signed the papers. "This is unusual," she admitted. "Usually we're adopting babies or young children, but every once in a while we get a case like this. A teenager who found a family late, or a family that found the child they didn't know they needed. Those are my favorite cases." After the ceremony, they went out for lunch to celebrate. Emma insisted on taking 1,000 pictures, documenting every moment. Olivia looked different in those photos than she had just months before. She'd gained weight, the hollow look gone from her face. Her hair was healthy and shiny. The bruises had long since faded. But more than the physical changes, there was something different in her eyes. The fear was gone. The constant vigilance, the expectation that this would all be snatched away had finally started to fade. She looked happy. She looked home. That evening, James found Olivia in Sarah's studio, staring at the self-portrait of Sarah pregnant with Emma. "Penny, for your thoughts?" he asked, coming to stand beside her. Olivia smiled softly. "I was just thinking about how different my life could have been if Sarah had kept me. Would I have grown up like Emma, safe and loved from the beginning? Would Sarah and I have painted together? Would I have known what it felt like to have a mother?" James put his arm around her shoulders. "I think about that too sometimes, about all the what-ifs. But then I remember something Sarah used to say. She believed that we end up exactly where we're meant to be, even if the path there is painful. She said that struggle creates depth, that hardship creates compassion." He gestured to Olivia's paintings lining the studio walls. "Look at what you create, Olivia. Your art has an emotional depth that comes from lived experience. You paint pain and hope and survival. That's powerful. That's valuable." Olivia nodded slowly. "I used to be so angry at her, at Sarah, for giving me up, for having another daughter and keeping her, for dying before I could meet her. But I'm not angry anymore. I understand now. She was just a kid herself when she had me. She did the best she could with what she had." She turned to James. "And in a weird way, maybe things worked out the way they were supposed to. If Sarah hadn't given me up, she wouldn't have met you. Emma wouldn't exist, and I wouldn't have this family now." "That's a very mature way to look at it," James said, impressed. "Dr. Hernandez would be proud." Olivia laughed. "Dr. Hernandez is always reminding me that I can acknowledge the hurt, while also recognizing the good that came from it. Apparently that's healthy processing or something." She leaned her head on James's shoulder. "Thank you, Dad, for everything, for believing me when you had no reason to, for helping me when I was a stranger, for choosing to be my father even though you didn't have to." The word Dad still made James's chest tighten with emotion every time she said it. "Thank you for letting me," he said softly. "Thank you for trusting us enough to stay. You could have run at any point. You could have decided this was too good to be true and disappeared. But you stayed, and you let us love you, and that took courage." He squeezed her shoulder. "I'm proud of you, Olivia. Not just for surviving, but for thriving, for letting yourself heal, for opening your heart even when it was scary." Emma came bursting into the studio, breaking the emotional moment with her usual energy. "Daddy, Olivia, come quick, it's snowing, the first snow of the year." She grabbed both their hands and dragged them to the window. Sure enough, big fluffy flakes were falling outside, coating the garden in white. "Can we go make snow angels? Please?" Emma begged. James looked at Olivia, who smiled and nodded. "Let's go." They bundled up in coats and scarves and ran out into the garden like children. Emma immediately flopped down in the snow, flailing her arms and legs to create a perfect angel. James and Olivia followed suit, lying side by side in the cold, white powder, laughing as snowflakes caught in their eyelashes. It was silly and childish and perfect. Later, when they came back inside pink-cheeked and shivering, Rosa had hot chocolate waiting for them, and they sat by the fireplace wrapped in blankets, completely content. That night, after Emma was asleep, James and Olivia stayed up talking. She told him about her dreams for the future. She wanted to study art seriously, maybe specialize in painting and mixed media. She wanted to travel someday, see the museums in Europe that Sarah had always dreamed of visiting. She wanted to use her art to help other foster kids, maybe teach workshops or donate pieces to raise money for youth programs. "I want to take what happened to me and make something good from it," she explained. I can't change my past, but I can use it to help others. James listened with pride. This girl who'd had every reason to become bitter and angry had instead chosen compassion. She'd survived hell and emerged with her humanity intact, with dreams and hopes and plans for a better future. Whatever you want to do, I'll support you, he promised. Art school is just the beginning. You've got your whole life ahead of you now, Olivia. Make it count. Spring brought new beginnings. Olivia graduated from high school with honors, an achievement that seemed impossible just months before. James threw her a huge graduation party, inviting everyone who'd been part of her journey. Her friends from school, her teachers who'd helped her catch up, Dr. Hernandez who'd helped her heal, even some of the staff from the shelter who'd treated her kindly. It was a celebration not just of academic achievement, but of survival, of resilience, of hope. Emma gave a speech that she'd written herself, though she needed help with some of the bigger words. My sister Olivia is the bravest person I know. She read from her carefully prepared note cards. She was alone and scared, but she never gave up. She found us, and now we're a family. I'm so happy she's my sister. I love you, Olivia. There wasn't a dry eye in the house. Olivia started art school that fall, diving into her studies with passion and dedication. She specialized in portraiture, particularly focusing on subjects who were often invisible to society. Homeless youth, foster kids, people struggling on the margins. Her senior thesis project was a series of self-portraits showing her journey from street kid to artist, raw and powerful and heartbreaking. The series won awards and was featured in a local gallery, with all proceeds donated to foster youth programs. During the gallery opening, James stood with Emma looking at Olivia's paintings. Your mother would be so incredibly proud, he whispered, feeling Sarah's presence strongly. Emma squeezed his hand. She is proud, Daddy. I can feel it. And somehow James believed her. Somewhere Sarah was watching her daughters, the ones she'd raised and the ones she'd given up, and she was smiling. Years passed. Emma grew from a precocious 5-year-old into a thoughtful teenager, still as energetic, but more focused. She followed in her mother's and sister's footsteps, showing real artistic talent. Olivia graduated from art school and started her own nonprofit, using art therapy to help foster youth process trauma. She fell in love with a fellow artist she met at a gallery showing, someone who understood her past and loved her anyway. They got married in the Richardson Garden, with Emma as maid of honor, and James walking Olivia down the aisle. At the reception, Olivia gave a toast that had everyone in tears. 5 years ago, I was homeless, terrified and convinced I'd never have a real family. Then a little girl with my mother's eyes grabbed my hand and decided I was her sister. And her father, who had every reason to turn me away, chose instead to give me a home. She looked at James with love shining in her eyes. Dad, you saved my life, not just by giving me food and shelter, but by giving me something I'd never had before. A family. People who chose to love me not because they had to, but because they wanted to. Thank you will never be enough, but thank you. James raised his glass, his voice thick with emotion. To family, not the one we're born into, but the one we choose. The one we build through love and commitment and showing up every single day. To Olivia, who taught us all what courage really looks like. To Emma, who reminded us that sometimes children see truth more clearly than adults. And to Sarah, who brought us all together even though she's no longer here. May we honor her memory by living with the same compassion and generosity she showed the world. Late that night, after the wedding guests had gone home and the newlyweds had left for their honeymoon, James and Emma sat together in Sarah's studio. It had become their tradition over the years, this quiet space where they felt closest to the wife and mother they'd lost. Emma, now 16 and eerily similar to how Sarah had looked at that age, studied the paintings on the walls. Do you think Mom planned all this somehow? She asked. Like maybe she knew Olivia would find us eventually? James considered the question. I don't think your mother could have planned it, but I think she would have hoped for it. She spent years wondering about the daughter she gave up, wishing she could find her and make things right. In a way, we did that for her. We gave Olivia the family Sarah always wanted her to have. He smiled at Emma, and we gained so much in the process. I can't imagine our family without Olivia now. Emma nodded thoughtfully. It's funny how life works out sometimes. If I hadn't seen Olivia that day, if I hadn't insisted on stopping to talk to her, none of this would have happened. She'd probably still be on the streets, we'd still be just the two of us, not knowing we were missing someone. She looked at her father seriously. Do you think there are other people out there like that? People who are supposed to be part of our family, but we just haven't found them yet? James pulled his daughter close. Maybe. The world is full of people who need families and families who need people. What I learned from Olivia is that family isn't about blood or legal documents. It's about choosing to show up for each other, about creating a space where people can be safe and loved and seen. He kissed the top of Emma's head. Your mother knew that. She lived it every day, and now we get to carry that forward. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, surrounded by Sarah's art and memories. Then Emma spoke again. I'm glad Olivia found us. I'm glad I have a sister. Even though she's grown up now and married and starting her own life, she's still my sister. That's never going to change. James smiled. That's right. That's what family means. No matter how much time passes or how far apart you are, you're still connected. You still show up for each other. As they left the studio and turned off the lights, James took one last look at Sarah's self-portrait. In the dim light, he could almost see her smiling, could almost hear her voice saying what she'd always said when faced with life's challenges. We'll figure it out together. And they had. Against all odds, through grief and trauma and impossible circumstances, they'd figured it out. They'd built a family from broken pieces, creating something beautiful and strong and real. The story of how a little girl found her big sister, and how that discovery transformed all their lives, became something of a legend in their family. Years later, when Olivia's own children asked how she met their grandfather, she would tell them about the day she sat crying on a bench, and a 5-year-old with their grandmother's eyes grabbed her hand and refused to let go. She'd tell them about the wealthy man who chose compassion over caution, who opened his home and his heart to a scared teenager with nothing to offer but hope. And she'd tell them about Sarah, the mother she never knew but felt connected to through art and love and the family she'd left behind. About how Sarah's decision to give her up at 17, heartbreaking as it was, had ultimately led to this moment, to a life filled with love and purpose and belonging, to a family that chose each other every single day. The Richardson family grew over the years. Emma eventually married and had children of her own. Olivia's nonprofit expanded, helping hundreds of foster youth find stability and healing through art. James became a grandfather multiple times over, spoiling his grandchildren the way he'd learned to do with Olivia and Emma. And through it all, Sarah's presence remained, a gentle reminder that love doesn't end with death, that the choices we make ripple forward in ways we can never fully predict. Sometimes late at night when the house was quiet, James would stand in Sarah's old studio and whisper thank you to the universe, to fate, to whatever force had brought Olivia into their lives. Thank you for the little girl who refused to walk past someone in pain. Thank you for the teenager who had the courage to accept help. Thank you for the chance to honor his wife's memory by loving the daughter she'd thought she'd lost forever. Because in the end, that's what this story was really about. Not just about finding family, but about creating it, about choosing love over fear, compassion over suspicion, hope over cynicism, about recognizing that sometimes the people who are meant to be in our lives show up in the most unexpected ways, and our job is simply to be brave enough to let them in. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment telling me about a time someone showed you unexpected kindness, and subscribe to the channel for more stories that remind us of the power of compassion and the resilience of the human spirit, because we all need reminders that even in the darkest moments, hope can find us, family can find us, love can find us. We just have to be brave enough to hold on when it does.